Batista with the catch!
Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Hand down, man down.
Yeah, I can see how disrespectful he's being right there.
No, I went to Temecula and brought you some dirt.
Yeah, that's a technical.
Mama, there goes that man.
And here we are, folks. Get your fanciest dust busters out. It's a gentleman's sweep. Joining me is our NHL expert, Nathan B. Nate, first thoughts on the NBA Finals wrapping up in Denver tonight.
Quick thoughts that I have on this game here is what a tremendously awful 3-point shooting performance from both teams this evening. I mean, you know, the game was close and competitive, but it wasn't like a fun type of competitive like some of the other games in the series. I just, as a more casual individual, not the best way to wrap up a series shooting wise.
Yeah, some ugly offense, and at the end of the game, it got even worse there, especially with some of the things the Heat decided to do. So, welcome everyone. We got some chatters in the comments already. We appreciate you. Come on in, give us your thoughts on Game 5, on the NBA Finals as a whole, and we will be previewing some hockey here in a little bit since we have the NHL Finals still on deck tomorrow. So thank you so much for tuning in with us on this late night bonus bounce, Nate. Yeah, so talking about the poor offensive performance, and I do want to talk a little bit about that fourth quarter. It drove me nuts, and those of you who are watching it heard a little of Jeff Van Gundy calling Miami out for this, maybe more specifically Jimmy Butler. But they made some really weird decisions late in that game, not going at the rim to try to draw a foul or draw in defenders to have a better, more open shot from three. What were your thoughts about Miami and Jimmy Butler in those final minutes there? Because I have some thoughts on both.
You know, I don't have the full playoff stats in front of me, but I feel like the Miami Heat were pretty successful most of this postseason with getting those fouls to get 3-point plays, especially later in the game. I mean, I felt like time and time again I saw Jimmy Butler do that throughout most of the series. And then they just started, like you said, playing kind of a weird type of ball game in the fourth quarter there. And you know, it on that one, not the final possession, but the possession before that Miami had, it didn't really feel like they had any sort of a high percentage play put in place. I mean, you know, we're in an age of analytics and shooting more threes, you know, you will be more successful that way, or at least that's what it seems like. And that's how the game goes nowadays for the most part. But it doesn't even feel like they really made an effort to find alternative ways to, you know, get some points there late in the going.
Yeah, they couple of contested threes. I think the quick inbound play with the kickback to Lowry, I don't know if that's the one in particular you were talking about, one of their final few possessions there, where it looked like they ran some half thought out action and then inevitably, I think, just inbounded it to Duncan Robinson, who quickly flipped it back to Lowry, who had inbounded, and he just chunks up a three. But the one in particular that irked me was Jimmy Butler's turnaround fadeaway contested three over the taller defender with plenty of time left. And James and I have gotten into this debate, and depending on the situation, sometimes we agree, sometimes we would do it differently. But I am of the opinion that with I think it was about 15 seconds left, Nate, that Miami was down 3, yes, but they settled for just a horrible turnaround three. And once Bruce Brown got the rebound, it was game over. Whereas even if you go to the rim and get fouled and all you get is one free throw, it's still now a 2-point game, and Bruce Brown has to go up there and make at least one of those free throws. And he has to make both of them to ice the game. So for my money, that's why I like to see players attack the rim in those situations. Yeah, it extends the game. Yeah, you're going to need someone to miss free throws, but doing what they did, the game was essentially over at that point. What were your thoughts? Were you okay with the shot selection, or would you have done something differently?
I mean, I personally would have done something differently in that. Yeah, I mean, I think we all needed a porcelain pot there, as
Well
Lee
said,
has
Lee.
has said. But I mean, I feel like again they could have done that completely differently. And I gotta say though, I do appreciate the fact that after on the last shot when it didn't go in, they did not foul the Nuggets. Why waste people's time? I mean, yes, Reggie
Yep.
Miller scored 8 points in 9 seconds, or the other way around. I always forget, but
You got it. You had it.
yeah, thanks for not wasting our time, to say the least. But I do want to touch on the celebration. It just kind of felt very subdued. I mean,
Hmm.
Jokic isn't a very emotional individual,
True.
but just watching everybody, I mean, there was some celebrating, but it just didn't seem like it was a huge deal in a weird sense, in my opinion. I don't know. I mean, you look back at, and circumstances are obviously different, but you look back at, let's say that the 2016 NBA Finals and how emotional that celebration was. I mean, for obvious good reason. But you have another first time champ after 40 some years, and
Yeah.
it just feels like maybe they considered this like a business meeting or something like that, and job well done.
There was no Kevin Garnett, impossible is nothing being screamed by Jokic, huh? Not not really what you're gonna get out of him. I mean, I saw something earlier today about game 4 having been, I think, the second least viewed finals game. The 2007 game 4 still holds the record as the worst, least viewed NBA finals game. So I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me that there wouldn't be any hype in the building. Like if they had won it all in Miami, might make sense if things were flat. But yeah, I mean, Jokic that's who he is. He doesn't get excited about anything. He doesn't like to talk about any of this stuff that makes this kind of stuff fun for us. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I tell you what though, I bet the parade won't be flat. What do you think, Nate? You think they're gonna get wild with some IPAs up in Denver?
I think they're going to be a little more wild with some other substance up there.
Oh.
They'll be multiple miles high. Let's just say that.
Oh, I see. I see what you did there. Oh, that is interesting. Good joke. Good joke, sir. Well done. What are some other thoughts? You had the takeaway about the bad shooting from both sides. Miami kept it close throughout. I mean, I think they had a lead. I started to get nervous when I saw Cody Zeller get put in the fourth, but he only got 1 minute. So sorry. I mean, normally I know we're both Hoosier fans at heart, and Nate's a real Hoosier, but yeah, I got a little nervous seeing our boy Cody get put in the game. But what are your thoughts about Miami in general? I guess I will give mine after you, but what's your takeaway for the Heat now that their season is over in a disappointment?
I just think playoff Jimmy's a real thing, and they basically caught lightning in a bottle, in this scenario. And I mean, looking back on it, like the Eastern Conference, like the teams just you know were not very consistent in the playoffs there. I mean, I don't really think, to be honest with you, I don't really think Boston would have done any better in this series. I don't think anybody in the East would have done any better in this series.
I would love to say Milwaukee would have, but then they got outcoached in the first round, so you can't really make that argument. As much as I'd like to, theoretically, I don't think a team that gets beat in the first round, yeah, you could say would have had a chance to beat Denver. So I think you're right as far as Boston goes. I don't think. I mean, would they have won 2 games? Maybe, probably not. I don't know. I think this was just clearly the better team. That's what they were. This is always what it was going to be. I cannot wait for James to do his victory lap here in a couple of days on Thursday at 9 p.m. Lee says that he thinks the town will have a gigantic celebration and parade. Yeah, I can imagine they're going to be celebrating this one for quite some time. As Nate pointed out, a first time champion. And I'm assuming that Jokic won Finals MVP, right? I thought it was funny to hear some of your feedback about the celebration because I knew as soon as the game was over, I turned it. I knew it wasn't going to be fun to watch. This is just not a team as historical of a moment as it is. I knew I could watch if there were any post game highlights, any antics. I'd catch them later. I didn't want to hold up our show here to watch Kenny and Shaq and Chuck and whatever they were going to do for the post game. So,
I got to say though, real quick, whoever makes Shaq's schedule for events and stuff needs to do a much better job of scheduling flights and things like that, because he didn't end up doing his DJ set at the 500 in the Snake Pit. I think that was related to, obviously the previous Eastern Conference, I want to say Eastern Conference Finals going longer. He was supposed to do a pre-race set yesterday at the Cup race at Sonoma, and he got in late and had to do it after the race. So it's just, you know, whoever makes the schedule apparently doesn't do a very good job of time management.
I've said it once and I'll say it again. Shaq is not a serious business person. He is just a very lovable character, and he gets millions of dollars thrown at him for that very reason. That's why he keeps getting these DJ gigs, even though he apparently never shows up to them. And by no accounts that I've ever heard, is he even a decent DJ? I don't know. You tell me, Nate. Is he a good DJ? I don't know.
You wouldn't think he would be, but from what I've heard from people who have seen him, like, he's better than you would think he is. I mean, I'm not saying like he's
Well, for me, that bar is incredibly low. So that's good. That's good. Well, it's good to know he's a decent DJ. I actually like this from Lee. Go get Dame is a real nice thought for Miami, and we talked about this in one of these previous episodes. It might have been last Thursday's episode of The Bounce. We've done a lot of bonus ones with the finals being in flux, so just check out the archives. We mentioned that Dame had apparently said he wouldn't be interested in joining the Heat if they won it all this year. Now that they haven't, Nate, what are your thoughts? We won't get into, we don't have to get into trade packages and how would we make it work. We'll worry about that on another day. But in theory world, would you be excited to see Dame go play with the Miami Heat? And do you think that that's a team that could win it all?
I mean, even with Dame, I don't think that they could win it all. And I say that as, obviously they were in the finals, but I would be more excited for Dame to be elsewhere, to be honest. Or
Okay.
Somewhere else that maybe hasn't necessarily won the title, but that's in a good spot potentially.
Any team names come to mind?
Off the top of my head, I don't really have any. I mean, I think he would be fun in Oklahoma City, but it's also not really a fit there with
Yeah,
what they all got going on. Um,
neither is the window. They're good and young, but they're not championship ready. They'll probably after 2 or 3 years, which is when I think he'll be no longer. I think he's probably got 3 more years of being an all-pro caliber player. And right at so there are going to be two ships passing in the night. In 2 or 3 years, the Thunder are going to be ready to be a perennial playoff team, and at that point, that's when Dame Lillard will be where Chris Paul currently is. So maybe it's still in the future for those two parties, but I don't think Dame with Oklahoma City works for next year. But I like where your head's at. Any other candidates
yeah.
crossing your mind?
So just off the top of my head, even if they're not realistic, what I think would be really fun is the Lakers if LeBron comes back. I
Mm.
mean, again, we can talk about it another time, but I don't necessarily think that they could make it work. And also, the other one I was thinking was if James Harden ends back up in Houston, I feel like that would be a nice spot for him, at whether it's realistic or not.
Oh. Yeah, that's another one that would take some looking into. I Houston's a very interesting team for me next year, especially if Harden comes back. I think Houston's been overlooked, maybe disrespected, at least as far as Twitter is concerned. As far as young teams, I think they had such a bad year statistically that anybody who's not a Rocket fan or not covering the NBA with a little more depth would say that there's a team. Oh, this team is trash. They're going to be trash. That's not really the case. I mean, they had I can never say his name right, but Senguin. Uh, they have so much young talent there. I like there's 4 or 5 guys that could really make another leap, and they had what was their Jabari Smith was their pick from last year that
Hmm.
everybody already is ready to get rid of. There's we talk about Porter Jr., right?
Yeah.
Kevin Porter Jr. out there. There's just a lot of talent in Houston. I think you could be on to something again. I don't know how that one works, but there is a lot of young talent. I'll say the same thing about them with Oklahoma, where I would, as far as his needing to win a title, I don't think it works, but that one would be fun. Let's rule out some of the. Let's see what Lee says. Still in the West, not a chance to even get to the finals, and that's a good point. I do think it could be an Eastern Conference team, so I want to kind of rule out some of the immediate usual suspects. I don't think it works in Milwaukee, so I don't think we would see that happen.
What about
Um,
Orlando?
well, I mean, Orlando's a fun one again, but it's the same as Houston.
Mm.
It's the same as the Thunder for me. They're good and they're young, but he's been in those situations for too long. I think he wants to go to a team that was probably at the very least in the playoffs this year.
What
Uh,
about the Knicks?
that I think could be a good one. I believe because of what we've seen Brunson play with Luka Doncic before, so Brunson could play with Dame. I believe that could work with some time. I don't love Tom Thibodeau. That's well recorded on this program, and I get worried that Tom Thibodeau would run those two into the ground, and they wouldn't have the legs to get all the way to a final. But no, I like the Knicks. I think maybe there's a potential Boston trade in there. We keep hearing about how Tatum and Jaylen Brown have to be separated. I don't know about all that, but maybe that's something that makes it happen. I don't know if there's another package if they have enough draft capital to work something around maybe Marcus Smart and a couple other rotation pieces and multiple draft picks. I don't know if that even gets Portland excited enough, but I think it's going to be one of those East Coast teams. If it weren't for the big Fred Van Vliet news that I know will go in more depth on Thursday with our former former Shocker, James, that maybe Toronto could have been a team that you would look at that's like, okay, this was a team that was they're a playoff team. They're on the bubble. They're missing a star. They had Siakam, Anobi. So maybe if they had Van Vliet as capital in return to send to Portland,
Right.
maybe they could have been in there. So I don't know, but I think it could be an Eastern Conference team. I will say all the teams that you've mentioned so far, I think they are great candidates for Dame's team after this contract. Because I think he's a guy whose career could last a lot longer because he has infinite range. So he's a guy who could play for several more years if he's willing to play 15 minutes a game and just go in and fill it up off the bench. Lee, good point here. Don't you think Cleveland could use another shooter? That's interesting. Nate, what do you think about Cleveland? They have some good guards there already, but Lee's right about the perimeter shooting.
I mean, my question is, would they run a 3-guard set, or are you going to ship out, I assume, Sexton or Garland, honestly? I mean,
Right. Yeah. You mean yeah, Donovan Mitchell or Garland. But
that's who I meant. My bad.
yep, no,
Sorry.
no, you're
I
good.
forgot.
You're good. Um yeah, I think in that situation it's probably Garland. Man, wow, Donovan Mitchell and Dame Lillard together. That's fun to think about. I I mean, that destroys anybody's 2K roster, right? Like that's just in theoretical land, in a vacuum, that sounds like a lot of fun to watch. And I would like to see, I think it could work. That one's interesting. I like that one, Lee. Cleveland, Dame to Cleveland. I'm gonna be that's what I'm gonna be doing when it's time to get ready for bed. Be hopping on Trade Finder, seeing if I can't get any Dame to Cleveland trades to work. I like that a lot. Yeah. Mitchell and Dame side by side. If they can figure out what they're going to do, they've got those nice front court pieces. I've seen
I was
people.
going to say, like, I was going to bring that up when you were talking about Boston, because I was going to say, I feel like Boston needs to address the front court more so than looking at getting Dame personally.
Mhm.
But, obviously Cleveland's already got Jared Allen and, a couple other nice pieces. So that would be a good spot, whether or not they could actually work out the draft capital and whatnot.
Yeah, and I've seen people calling for Jarrett Allen to be out in Cleveland. I'm not certain that that's the move, but maybe you're talking about a 3-team situation here as well. That's in my opinion, I think that it's very probable that it's a 3-team trade. If Dame ends up being traded. When you have someone of his magnitude, the number of assets they're going to need to trade hands, there might not be the teams that are going to be interested in acquiring Lillard that he also wants to play for. They likely aren't going to have the right package on their own to make Portland want to do it as well. So I think that'll be interesting. I think that's where you see 3 and 4 team trades come in. Let me hop back over to the comments here. Yeah, Lee said very good front court, needs stability. Yeah, agreed. That one, Dame could bring that. I like that. I like these Dame hypotheticals. I'm going to make sure we have James do some homework between now and Thursday and come check out these Dame takes so we can come back with more ideas. Speaking of that, for Thursday, and we'll talk about it now, but just to prime you all, we will go back to it. Nate, I kind of want to ask you about this one too. I already mentioned Fred Van Vliet. Big news earlier today from Woj that he has declined what I believe was a $22.8 million team. I can't remember the numbers, so forgive me for that. But he declined his team option to return to Toronto. That does not mean he'll no longer be playing for the Raptors. He has declined his option. They would have to re-sign him to a new contract. So with all that in mind, Nate, and those of you watching at home, let me know in the comments, who do you think Fred Van Vliet is most likely to land with? Or if you're not, who do you think he'd be the best fit for?
I think staying in Toronto would be a good fit for him. I wasn't surprised that he opted out, and I think it was 22 and a half player option. You
At
know,
least I was close.
he probably deserves a bigger contract. And if he sticks around and OG sticks around and Siakam continues to be Siakam, considering that it would be a possibility for Dame. I mean, that would be a pretty lethal East Coast team right there. But I think he'll still end up in Toronto personally, especially if they're working on trying to get some stuff in place there. Because what's Toronto's draft spot? Just curious. I can't remember offhand.
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not a high lottery pick because they were at least a bubble team. So they're somewhere mid first round.
Mm,
Um yeah, that's interesting. I am going to continue to beat my conspiracy theory. I think we're going to see Fred VanVleet go play in Philadelphia and join Nick Nurse. But it would be interesting. Perhaps he also has a good relationship with Adrian Griffin in Milwaukee.
true.
Although I don't, other players would probably be moving if that's the case. But I personally
I
think Fred VanVleet is on the move.
and I like what I'm interested by. Yeah, I was
Ooh.
about to say I'm interested by what Lee said there because I thought about saying San Antonio for Dame, but then thinking about it a little bit, that's going to require them giving up the number one overall pick, and then at that point, it's less appealing personally. But yeah, I mean, if signing Van Fleet for that team there, and then getting Wemby, and having all these good pieces with Sochan and Brad, I'm gonna butcher the shit out of it. Branham, I can't talk today apparently.
Malachi Branham, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and Keldon Johnson. I mean, they got some good pieces there, and I think they would be instant contenders in the division. Weirdly enough.
I like that. So I'm very high on Branham. Call it Big Ten bias, call it local scouting, if you will. But I got to see a lot of him play at Ohio State, and did a draft profile on him last year going into the draft, and he was someone that I really thought was going to be the kind of immediately contributing high floor, low ceiling kind of player that I just figured is going to be a guy that at some point in this league is going to be able to average you 16 to 18 a night and contribute, be a good player on any team's bench. I look forward to the step ups that I assume he's going to make in year two. There's a lot of young talent there. So yeah, I think San Antonio is a good one. We're going to stick in point guard world here. I'm going to ask you, Nate, and those of you at home, let me know what you think. Chris Paul, we have some new information from the last time we've talked. Chris Paul has not been waived. They are looking into options, potentially going to trade him. I still think there's a really good chance that he does get waived or gets cut in order to make sure that the cap numbers work. But hey, a trade's not out of the realm of possibility. So I've heard the Lakers already as a rumored location. I edited an article today on Last Word on Sports. Go check that out. That says the Warriors are a potential landing spot for Chris Paul. Now, I've also seen and heard rumors that Chris Paul is very interested in just renegotiating a contract with Phoenix. So there are three options for you there, Nate. Feel free to take any of the other 27 that are on the table for you. Where is Chris Paul going to play next year, or where, if he came to you for advice, where would you tell him to go?
I would tell him not to go to Los Angeles. I don't think that would be a good situation, and then especially for the Lakers. And I'm not too familiar with their cap space and what their contracts look like. I just don't. I mean, that's not going to improve the team to the point where I'd feel comfortable taking that on. I'd be really intrigued to see what a restructured contract would look like in Phoenix. I'm
Mhm.
not sure what they would need to cut for cap space, although, you know, it
I think they're
seems
gonna
there's a
pay him
couple.
15 million no matter what. So
Yeah. It
mm,
seems there are some owners nowadays that don't give a shit and just completely blow past the luxury tax, uh, you know, line there. So who knows even. I Golden State would be interesting because I don't think he would be a starter, obviously, um,
correct.
in my opinion. But that would be a good bench piece for them. Um, I mean, I would go with either one of those two. I don't feel comfortable saying one way or another. Um, Personally, I mean, Lee's got a good point there. You know, he's definitely not CP3 of old, but I think either one would be fine. You know, as long as the contracts, you know, make sense for either of them.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting with the new rules, with the mid-level exceptions and the things that organizations are no longer able to do that they could do even up until last year. So that one will be interesting. We'll be keeping an eye on it. I don't think any of these teams from the finals are going to be candidates for Chris Paul's services, but before we switch gears, we've got a bonus segment at the end of the night here. We are going to switch to the other big arena sport that usually, although it's known as a winter sport, now these days we have both NBA and NHL finals in June. So pretty interesting how these sports are damn near year long now, year round. But any final thoughts from you, Nate, on the Miami Heat Denver Nuggets NBA Finals as I share what we like to call a little cool stat, bro, on the network here? Stan Kroenke has owned teams have now won 4 championships in the past year and a half. I did not know he owned the Colorado Mammoth or that there was a National Lacrosse League team of such name. So, Nate, got any thoughts on this before we talk finals?
Um, you know, I don't think Rams fans of yesterday are too thrilled reading about this. Um, you know, I mean, at least he goes out and does things for the teams to try and, you know, be successful, unlike some of these owners that put their hands up their ass and just sit on them,
Yeah.
you know, aka Jerry Reinsdorf. Um, I mean, I don't like Cronky. I can't talk today.
Doesn't like
Um,
Walter Cronkite.
yeah. Um, Personally, just because I don't think that whole situation in St. Louis went down very well. But I mean, can't really speak for anything but the results. So I guess good for him.
I guess good for him. I like it. I love that take. That's fair. I mean, that's my take on usually anything any billionaire has ever accomplished. Usually, Nate, my response is that exactly. I guess good for him. Well done, you rich person. Who'd have thought rich people would be successful in America? My God, it's a what a great story. And as Lee pointed out, it just made him richer. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, I'm gonna put a bow here on the NBA finals of it all because I know we're gonna do our usual 60 to 90 minutes on Thursday. And Nate, you are welcome to join us as well then. And I
I'll
think
be
hope
I'll be serving it'll be at the end, but I'll be serving beer at a
Ooh,
barn on Thursday. So, you know,
nice. You know that I can understand. That's understandable. It's a good enough reason to miss. Hopefully, we'll have Johnny Football here on Thursday to talk with us. I know he has some good thoughts on what it would take. What's it going to take for next year for the Denver Nuggets to be dethroned? Now, do you have any thoughts on that, Nate? Since you won't be there with us on Thursday, let me ask you that question. In your opinion, are the Nuggets the team to beat next year? Is there a team that you think got screwed, or because of injuries they weren't who you think they could be? So is there a sleeping giant for next season, or is Denver clearly the team to beat? And if that is the case, what are teams going to have to do to beat them? Do you have any candidates for here's who's going to knock Denver off the top next year?
I mean, I think they're the team to beat, and I appreciate that, Lee. But I'm really curious to see what happens with Memphis. I mean, now the finals are done, so what the hell's going to happen with Ja?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
So, that's the thing I'm most interested in terms of the NBA. Just because I think, I don't think they'll obviously re-sign Dylan Brooks. Curious to see what happens with Ja, and I'm curious to see, any potential moves that they may make. So, again, Denver's the team to beat, but, we'll see about some of these other things moving forward.
You've got Denver as the team to beat. I like that. I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler for Thursday. I'm going to save the clip, so you'll have to come back and join us Thursday at 9 if you want to watch this specific clip that I'm about to reference here. But I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Bucks as the top team in the East that could dethrone the Nuggets. And here's a little bit of the reason why. On top of the fact that they're just a very good team led by one of the best players in the world. They're one of the deepest teams in the NBA. But Brian Windhorst reported in a conversation he was having, some ESPN footage. This footage is on YouTube. I have the clip for us in a couple of days. He claimed that the only reason Nick Nurse pulled out of the Milwaukee Bucks job was because he didn't want it to be announced that his former assistant coach, Adrian Griffin, was actually Milwaukee's first choice. To make that more clear, Adrian Griffin didn't get the job because Nick Nurse pulled out. Nick Nurse pulled out so it would look so obvious that his former assistant coach got the job over him. That's according to Brian Windhorst. So when I see something like that, it lets me know that that team's very high on Adrian Griffin. A lot of people were very high on Adrian Griffin and the work that he's done. I think Milwaukee could have the next great coach on their staff. And depending on who they get to fill their ranks, they were a team that dealt with injuries all throughout the playoffs. They have the bodies in the front court between Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis has really turned things around. And I think if there's a team out there right now that I'm willing to say with a couple of tweaks here and there to that roster that could contend with Denver for next year, I'm going to go with Milwaukee for now. Maybe my mind will change. I hope we get James and John's takes on that come Thursday. But Nate, any other final thoughts on NBA Finals Game 5 or the series in general? Did it go about how you thought it went?
I'm pretty sure I called it in the preview. I thought I called it Nuggets in 5.
I believe you did. Yeah, I'm very upset that it didn't go to 6. I was so close.
Can't say I'm surprised about it. Last thing I'll say about the finals, it just feels like also the Miami Heat kind of lost some gas, ran out of gas, whatever term you want to use.
Yep.
So nothing to be ashamed about for them. And last NBA thing I'll say here, because I know we're going to address something real quick, is I will say this time and time again until things get cleared up, but for your Indiana Pacers to ever be successful again, you're not going to like what I'm going to say, but I think you give LeBron half of the team.
What? Yeah, of course I'm not going to like it because it's ridiculous. That's
Give
the exact
LeBron
opposite.
give LeBron half the team. I'm just saying.
Oh my goodness. This might get clipped. You better watch out, man. Giving LeBron half the team. I wish I had a little. I need to go get some coffee so I can more aggressively combat this take. But no, I think that's very wrong. That's the last thing that the Indianapolis or the Indiana Pacers should do because and you can already a little Freudian slip there. spoiler, foreshadowing, because LeBron's going to move him out of Indianapolis if he owns half the team. He's going to find a bigger market. He doesn't want to spend any time in another Midwestern city. No, the Pacers are fine. If anything, uh, let's just see what they do with this draft. They have a young, exciting core. They're only a piece or two away from being a top 4 seed in the East. They're really not that far. With if Halliburton and Benedict Mathurin continue to progress in the way that we expect them to, don't forget the Pacers have the 7th overall pick again this year. We're not sure exactly what's going to shake out. Mathurin was the 6th overall pick, and for a good chunk of the season, people had him right up there with Banchero for the Rookie of the Year running. So you just never know.
I've had some friends who are Pacers fans basically say, "Oh, if Larry Bird has any complete say, you're going to be full of dicks." So who knows?
I respectfully disagree. I don't. That is the first I have heard Grady Dick mentioned as a Pacers, but I can't predict this. There's no way. Nobody's talking to me inside that organization, so it's possible. I don't think that's a good fit, but it would be funny,
I don't really have any opinions about it, to be honest. I'm more just trying to rile you up a little bit.
I like it. I like it. No, hey, if there was a need for it, I would love, either Jalen Hood Schifino, the next DeMar DeRozan, or what I'd really love is for Dale Davis's son to somehow be a Pacer, but I don't think that's going to work. I don't think Tracy Jackson Davis is going to align with where the Pacers are drafting unless he falls a little further back than I'm expecting. But that would be cool to have a legacy on board. But
oh yeah,
no, I'm just going to trust the squad. We'll see what they get into. I like Lee's take here. LeBron needs to buy into expansion. That's probably where he gets a piece of a team. And that's probably where we see him in his Wizards arc. I don't think that LeBron will pull an MJ/Tom Brady and retire and then unretire. I think he's image conscious enough that he won't do that, except if he needs to do so in order to get partial ownership of an expansion team. Then I could see him pulling a move like that and coming out of retirement to sell more tickets for his own business, because he's
right.
too savvy of a businessman to pass up on something like that.
I will say this, maybe if we talk a little bit down the road in another Bounce episode about this, because I got a lot of thoughts on like him being an owner player. I will say this, depending on how many expansion teams come in this next round of expansion, if it's just 2 or more, I have a feeling it'll probably end up just being 2. And I most certainly believe one of them will be Seattle. I don't think he buys in Seattle, personally. I think he'll buy into the other one, whatever it would be, which the way things are going, looks like Las Vegas.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if it's Vegas, I agree with you. If it ends up being East Coast, I could see LeBron buying into the Seattle one potentially, because at least that's closer to him. At least it's got that West Coast swing going on, boys to men style. There we go. There is our final thoughts on the NBA Finals Game 5. We talked just a lot about more NBA general stuff, but that is perfectly fine because, like I said, in 2 more days we will be right back here to talk more NBA. So Nate, I'm about to switch. We're gonna do a complete overhaul of the brand here. I wish I had a musical cue for this, but here we're just gonna play Dance Pop. I wonder if you can hear it. Oh, here we go. We're switching, guys, to Late Night Bites. We're gonna talk about the NHL Finals. Nate, I'm gonna turn this music down. Tell us about the wild world of hockey. What's going on? We got a preview. We got a game to preview for tomorrow.
So series is 3-1 Vegas. Game 5 here tomorrow night in Las Vegas. Well, technically Paradise, Nevada, if we're gonna, be splitting hairs here. At T-Mobile Arena, Game 5, and it's an interesting Game 5 in my opinion. Just because Florida may be without the services of Matthew Tkachuk due to injury. And there is somebody else that also didn't travel with the team. So they're a little banged up right now. And honestly, I don't even know if Matthew Tkachuk has been at full swan the entire series because he's been dealing with some nagging stuff. So it'll be really interesting to see how Florida comes out and responds if they're without their captain tomorrow. But this is like, I obviously live in Indiana. I don't live in Nevada. But even like reading stuff online and just seeing how this is getting hyped up in Las Vegas tomorrow, it's kind of like chilling. It's not to the same anywhere to the same level as when the Cubs, had Game 7 and won the World Series for the first time in 108 years. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not that level, but it's like it's different
It's
for.
hard to compare that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's practically impossible to compare it, to be honest with you. Um, but this series has been real chippy. If Matthew Tkachuk ends up playing, he's really close to breaking the record for most penalty minutes in a series. Stanley Cup final series, actually, surprisingly. So it's just there's been a lot of questionable officiating on both sides. I mean, to be honest with you, Aiden Hill, the goalie for the Golden Knights, has kind of gotten away with some cross checks and some other things. But it's just, if that's the style of play that Florida plays, they play that real chippy, kind of aggressive, let's do some extracurricular stuff. But the problem with it is Vegas has the capability to punch right back, whereas some of the other teams in the Eastern Conference didn't necessarily want to play that game and didn't necessarily have the firepower to deal with that. So Florida's, I mean, you don't want to get away with what got you there, but I feel like Florida's got to change some things up if they want to be successful in winning these next 3 games in a row to win the Stanley Cup. Obviously, I personally, bias and all, don't think that that's going to happen. And then if Kachuk is out, I think that's a huge blow for their chances tomorrow. Um, I'm going Vegas in 5 here personally, and I think this will be like a 3-1, 3-2 type of game again, like last game in Florida, because that was a wild last couple of minutes there. I mean, Florida got a lot of good chances right there, and then of course the scrum broke out, and there are some people that are not happy with Alex Pietrangelo not getting a penalty, because he was in the penalty box through the end of the game because Florida had a power play. And as soon as the whistle blew, he was released from the box and ended up in the little scrum that they had at the end of the game. And some people weren't happy, but I mean, the game was over, so whatever. So I'm really curious to see how this game series is going to go tomorrow. I mean, Florida's got to come out punching, not literally, but figuratively on the sticks there, and try and rattle Aiden Hill there. So we'll see, but I mean, I'm pretty much Vegas in 5.
Locking it in, huh? Vegas in 5. He's feeling confident. I can't go against you, especially if Kachuk is out. If you guys missed those stats, he's leading in points, he's leading in assists,
And penalty minutes.
and penalty minutes somehow. Very odd. As much as I want to pull, I'm a Habs fan, but I live in Columbus, so I have a soft spot for the Blue Jackets. So I'd love to see Bob the goalie, get one, but I think your boys are going to take it down just for the sake of excitement. I I'm I'm pulling for us seeing Kachuk and for him to get yet another game-winning goal, which seems to be he seems to be doing two things all playoffs, either sitting in the penalty box or scoring game-winning goals. So one of two things is probably going to happen tomorrow. So there we
I
go, Nate.
I gotta say though, also like this is the hype is real. I mean, they're having like a pregame sort of party down by T-Mobile Arena, which is really close to New York, and Park MGM on the strip there. And there's like a couple like outdoor restaurants and stuff and bars, so it's going to be pretty wild down there. And they also are having Steve Aoki play like a set down there during pregame. Um, I mean, it's you know, I'm not a Vegas resident, obviously, but Vegas has pretty much become a hockey town, and even if the Raiders were to ever win a Super Bowl, I don't think they would ever replace the Golden Knights as Vegas's team, especially since the Raiders were, a relocation. The only other possibility would be if, Vegas does end up with an NBA franchise. But I think the fact that, the team came together, you have some of the original misfits still around, and then not to go a deep dive, but with the Las Vegas shooting in 2017, and they played a game not too long after and retired a number for the amount of people that unfortunately passed away in that horrific incident. I mean, there's just a lot of like intertwined connection in between the city and this franchise. So it's gonna be something if they end up holding off and winning tomorrow, or game 6 or 7 if we go that far. But I gotta say, my only beef I'm gonna have is the people that consistently bitch about Vegas after they went to the Stanley Cup Finals in year 1 and have been consistently good, and bitching about them getting the trades during the expansion draft and then having a lax set of expansion draft rules, which fair enough.
Yeah, you people, you're all right, and whatever Nate's about to say is just sour grapes because he can't handle the truth. But go ahead, Nate.
But if you go back and look, people were saying this team was going to be in the basement in year 1 and was going to absolutely suck. And people want to have revisionist history. And you know what? If you want to blame anybody, blame the other 30 at the time, 30 GMs that were stupid enough to make stupid trades so Vegas wouldn't draft people in the expansion draft. That's all I'm going to say about that. I will consistently defend that fact till the goddamn day I die, because people, I mean, I don't mind playing the villain in some things. I mean, I'm not on the team, I'm just a fan. But it'd be nice to rub it in to a lot of people.
Well, you might have your chance, and I'm sure if the team ices it, that Nate will be back to rub it in to some of those folks right here on Bite Size Sports, maybe even on a real episode of Late Night Bites, not just a bonus. I think we're looking to settle on a Wednesday, Friday night schedule. I think for that, those are the two nights that are best and most readily available. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. You get notified when we go live about 30 minutes before we are going live. You should also follow us on Twitter, because one of us will be tweeting to let you know, hey, we've got a show tonight. Make sure you're there. We'd love to have your comments. So let's see. Oh, Lisa's Kid Poker is their greatest fan. What do you think, Nate? You're not the biggest Golden Knights fan.
I don't know about that one, but Little John gets a lot of screen time, weirdly enough.
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah. You guys are going to be the next. You're going to be like hockey's Lakers, huh? That's where all the famous people are going to go to Golden Knights games.
Well, a lot of people, some people, I don't want to say a lot of people, but some people also don't like a lot of the pregame stuff too, because it's like extremely fucking gaudy, and like there's a whole like 2 to 3 minute like fake like night battle. Well, I was doing quotations, but you can't see me, so like it was completely irrelevant to do that.
They do the whole, like, what do they call those, medieval dinners or whatever? Like, where they'd have those fake knights fight and you'd eat mutton, you'd have, like, a giant turkey leg, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, medieval times.
There we go, medieval times. Yeah, they start the hockey game with medieval times. No wonder everybody hates your team's guts, Nate. Like, that that's the cringe levels are too high right there for me.
I mean, it is kind of a little bit ridiculous, but it is Las Vegas.
Yeah,
It's
when in
going to be
Rome.
ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I look forward to another ridiculous episode of this or another podcast with you, Nate, but it's probably about time to send them home. See, this is classic me, running joke behind the scenes for those of you still here. Very often I will say things like, we're going to make this one a short one, guys, maybe 30 minutes. And then next thing you know, it goes well over the hour mark. So I'm going to try to get us out of here before we hit the big 6-0. But Nate, the floor is yours. Any final thoughts for the folks at home before you tell them where they can find you on the internet?
It'll be interesting, hockey aside, it'll be interesting to see how MLB starts to shake out here because, we're a good chunk of the way through the season, but not quite halfway. And some of these races are still really close. I mean, the NL Central looks like a garbage bin. I mean, not as much of a garbage bin as the AL Central, but it'll be interesting to see how some of these division races shake out, and whether or not I will be drinking myself silly in happiness or pain in the next couple of days. So we'll see.
Yeah, look at that beautiful, beautiful NL Central standings right there, which reminds me, we do not currently have a full-time baseball show, but we would love to talk more baseball throughout the year. And as the NBA and the NHL seasons wind down, we'll be looking at covering this a little bit more, maybe even watching more of it on playback TV. So if you are a huge baseball fan, you want to come hang out with us, maybe get a little FaceTime on screen, send me a DM on Twitter at KevNevic_ or send it to us at Bite Size Sports. Nate, where can they find you on Twitter or the internet?
Ben Ham and Turkey in most places.
Very nice, very good. And yeah, make sure you're following Bite Size Sports on Instagram, where either Nate, Trevor, James, or myself, we like to go live from the events we are covering, share some footage with all of you. So get some behind the scenes or from the stands, kind of depends on the gig. But go check us out there. We appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. Special shout out to Lee in the chat. Thank you for keeping the conversation moving with us. Always appreciate your input. And those of you, the rest of you that watched and didn't comment, we still love you too. We appreciate you. You keep the lights on around here. So thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. Again, shows this week. What have we got? Tomorrow night, Necessary Roughness, Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. We have a special guest, a little guest host to join John, Nick, and Michael on Tuesday. We've got our Another Damn Fantasy podcast on Wednesday and Late Night Bites later on in the evening, Wednesday night. Thursday, of course, the bounce 9 p.m. James and I will talk more about some of this stuff. And we have Biting Early come Friday morning and Rumbles of Red, where Trevor will be doing some more best ball drafting. So I think Rumbles of Red will be next week. But again, give us a follow, subscribe to YouTube so you will never miss a live stream or some of our uploaded, pre-recorded content. Until next time, thank you so much. We miss you already. We'll see you next time.